Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to have a look at the 2024 Nissan Ariya. This is the top of the line, the Platinum E-Force Plus in this deep ocean blue metallic. Looking great in the sunshine. Dual motors, 389 horsepower. So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at this design, because I think Nissan has done a pretty good job with this design. It's one of the better looking EVs. It does look maybe a little bit like a blob, like a bar of soap, but they got some chiseledness in this design. So we're going to talk about the front end design, the side view, of course, all the line flow that we have going on here, full light bar here in the back. We're going to talk more about the rear end as well, the interior, and then of course, last but not least, we're gonna take this for a drive. So let's start by popping the hood, because you don't have a frunk in the Ariya, and I do think that is a bit of a mistake, because if you look at the competition, most of them actually do have a frunk in the front end. But here, if we open this up, you can see that we have a bunch of cables and motors and electronics going on down here. This is not something that you want to touch unless you really know what you're doing. Under the hood, we have dual motors, 389 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque, connected to a 1-speed automatic transmission. Since it's dual motors, yes, you do get all-wheel drive, of course. You got an 87 kilowatt-hour battery pack. EV range comes out to about 267 miles. Not bad at all. Sort of standard or typical for this segment of car. 0 to 60 is done in 4.9 seconds with a top speed of 124 miles per hour. Prices tested comes out to $56,940. Now the thing about this Ariya here is that this is not a sporty car at all. However, Japan just unveiled the Nismo version. Unfortunately, we're not gonna get that here in the United States, and that comes with the different suspension, also way better looking wheels, and probably some other changes to make this Ariya a little bit more sporty. It does have very slow charging though, so you only have 130 kilowatt of charging capability, which means 10% to 80% is going to take you about 40 minutes. And I can confirm, having charged this once now, it is a pretty slow charging experience. Now, coming around here to the front end, as I said, I'm a fan of this design. I think it looks very chiseled, very nice. We have some functionality in the front end. Very slim headlights here, as you can see, full LED, and then we have this big blade of LED that is the indicator light and also the daytime running light, looking very nice. Up top, we have a very simplistic hood with two lines coming down from the side here, actually going into this plastic piece, wrapping around the front end into this V-motion grille. I guess we could call this a V-motion grille, even though it's not 100% what we're used to seeing. And you also have this Nissan logo in the front end being illuminated, which I think looks very cool at night. Definitely gives this a super strong brand identity when you see this car at night. The overall proportions and the styling in the front, I like it. Some people think it looks too round, but I think the overall proportions, yes, they do have this EV style to it, but thanks to all this chiseledness and all these sharp lines that we have, beautiful chamfers, it makes it feel a little bit better looking than, for example, the Mercedes EQ SUV series. You also have these slots in the side that are in fact functional, adding some airflow here, helping with the aerodynamics, of course. Parking sensors located right there. You do have 360 camera in this car, the front-mounted camera. It's located right here underneath the Nissan logo, and all the way down we do have the cooling for the battery pack all the way down here with some LED fog lights. You can see we have a bit of a texture behind this plastic piece. So the grille itself is very flush or very flat, but behind this panel you do have this texture that I think looks very nice as well. This comes with a two-tone option. You can have it in either a single-tone, monotone color, but this, as you can see, if we go around to the side view, this has the black roof, which I think looks good in this deep blue ocean metallic styling that we have here. Coming around to the side view here, you have the option of either get your Ariya with these 19-inch wheels, or you can option for the bigger 21-inch. And these are not my cup of tea, if I'm honest with you. These wheels are some of the least attractive EV wheels I've seen so far. And the size for the wheel overall is 235s, 55R19s, both in the front and in the rear. I would 100% option for the 20-inch wheels, or if I could, I don't think I can, but I would go for the Nismo wheels, which I think looks way better than both the 19s and the 20s for the Ariya. So looking at the side view here, I think it's still, as I said, it has this bubbly design, as you can see, with the flow going right here and the A-pillar stretching very far forward, and also in the back have this curvature to it. But what Nissan has done here is adding a lot of styling lines. You can see the beautiful shoulder line here, how it goes into almost the corner of the taillight, but goes right above the taillights. We also have this typical Nissan line. They do this with a lot of models these days, to add a silver piece in the sort of to emphasize the roof line, and I do think it looks very, very good here. It also looks great on the Nissan Z, emphasizing the Z line that we have right here. Now looking at the charging port here, you have two standard charging ports. If we open this up, you have one at the top and also this one down there at the bottom. They're also going to release the adapter for the Tesla superchargers. I think they're going to do that with the 2025 model year. This is a 2024, so you will be able to charge this at the Tesla superchargers by next year. Now looking at the roof here, you have the black roof up top, very metallic, a lot of metallic flakes in this color. Look how beautiful it is in the sunshine here, with all the metallic sparkling going on here, looking very beautiful. Body color door handles, you have a black graphics in the lower section. About 7 inches of ground clearance, which is not a lot for an SUV. I would like to see a little bit more than that. Maybe even slap some off-road wheels and tires on here. That would be pretty cool. Would obviously reduce the range a little bit. Black side mirrors here with an LED indicator. Now the thing is, if you go with the 20-inch wheels for the Ariya, it's of course going to affect the range just a little bit. But for me, I would much rather have much better looking wheels, and it's going to drop the range by about 10 miles or so, which is totally fine for me. Now coming around to the rear end, and this is, I'm not sure if this is my favorite view for the Ariya, because I do think the front end looks very chiseled and nice as well. But as you can see, we have the trend of the decade coming back here, which is the full LED light bar stretching across here. In this case, I do think it suits this car to have an LED light bar. It just makes everything come together nicely. It sort of feels like it's a continuation from this shoulder line here, then wrapping around in the rear end. I also like that we have the Nissan logo or letters spelled out here behind this plastic piece, looking very, very clean. Full LED lights here for the reverse lights, the indicators, and the light bar itself. Now looking at the line flow in the back here, love this line that goes across from the shoulder line here, cutting into the taillights, and then coming back and wrapping around the lower section here. It's just a beautiful line that sort of frames the overall graphics in the rear end. You have a wiper mounted a bit off center here in the rear end, and we have this functional spoiler up top, which also adds a little bit more sportiness to this design. You can see that it is completely functional. We have two slots on each side that then create some airflow in the back here. I'm not sure if you need a lot of downforce for this car, but it doesn't matter. It still looks very, very cool. And now, if you look at the badging here, you have a lot of letters here going on. Platinum Plus, E-Force right there. You have the Ariya right here and the Nissan in the middle. The good news here is it's not chrome, so it's in this sort of bright silver finish, which I do prefer over a chrome finish. All the way down at the bottom, you have a pretty normal looking diffuser. It's not too aggressive at all. Now, if we pop this trunk here, of course, it is power assisted. You don't really have a lot of space back here, because this being the dual motor is meaning that we do need to have some space between the rear axles for the rear motor. So if you go for the single motor, you are definitely going to get a little bit more space. You have all the cables for the charging over there. And if we open this one up, it's really not a lot to see here. Some tire inflator kit and stuff like that. But you can see just how shallow this is. If you want to, of course, you can fold down the rear seats to get more storage here. I do like that we have a couple of LEDs here, first aid kit, and some more storage on each side of the main compartment in the back. So let's fold this back down and let's check out the interior for the Nissan Ariya, which Yes, we do have the dual screen setup, which is typical for pretty much every single car company these days. But if you look at the integration, I don't really mind the integration here. There are a couple things that I don't like with this interior as well, which we're going to talk about. But if you go for the platinum trim, this is the only color combination you're going to get. Sort of this clay blue finish for the seats. I do think it looks good, especially in contrast with these bronze finishes that we have on these details here. And you have some Alcantara here on the top that goes into the dash as well. The build quality in here is decent. There are a couple of squeaks in here that I don't want to see in a car in this price range. Memory seats here. You also have memory seats for the passenger, which is pretty unusual. All the controls for the windows here and the mirrors as well unlock and lock the door. You have more storage down at the bottom with some hard plastic here, which is totally fine. The power adjustments for the seats is located right here, as you would expect. E-Force, meaning that you do have the dual motor setup. Quick overview of the interior here before we jump in and have a look at all the details going on. So listen to this. It has a very Mercedes-like feel when you close the door. It just feels super solid and very unlike Nissan, in my opinion. You have dual setups here, as I said. 12.3 inches gauge cluster right there, and infotainment screen as well. Wireless Apple CarPlay. That works pretty well. The native system is sort of maybe a little bit laggy here. I'm not entirely sure. I would want to have it be a little bit more responsive than this. You do have the native navigation here that doesn't really feel super modern. It feels like it was designed maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but the responsiveness is decent. 100% always have Apple CarPlay installed. I never really use the native systems when you have Apple CarPlay in your car. Now, what's really interesting here is if you go into the climate settings, this is where it becomes a little bit messy graphically for me. You have the heated steering wheel as a separate logo up here, heated and ventilated seats right here, and then that pops up in a separate graphic. So you have the ventilated seats here and the heated seats on the left side. We can turn that off for now. So this screen right here looks a little messy to me. Fan speed up top in the center and the temp controls. I guess it looks decent, but if you don't want to mess with this, you always have these controls down here. And these are some controls that I don't really like, because as you can see, these features, these sort of buttons, are not really buttons. They're just tactile, like you get a little bit of a feel through this entire panel when you're clicking these buttons, and it feels kind of weird. I just want to have one button, and you can't really adjust the temp too fast here because it doesn't work that way. It sounds pretty good, but the feel is not the best feel. And if you want to adjust the temp, you can see that it doesn't really go fast. It just doesn't feel like you have good control with these type of buttons. Just put normal buttons here. Even though this looks very clean, I appreciate the design aspect of it. It's not that functional when you're actually using it. So that is the infotainment screen. We have the big volume knob here in the middle, a hazard buttons for the audio system on this side. You have the vents integrated nicely in this bronze trim here on each side. I do like how this is integrated in the interior. Have a very clean line and very horizontal lines here with this wood texture. You also have the Alcantara up top here. This is hard touch plastic up top, which is totally fine. That's an area you're never going to use anyway. You do have a head-up display with the Platinum Ariya. That is something that that is also a feature I don't really care about in most cases. Further down, we do have the start button, parking brake. Don't really have a lot of storage for under your armrest. So what Nissan did here instead is they created this feature here. So you have these buttons to open up and close some additional sort of a second glove box here. And these buttons down here are the same type of buttons that we have for the climate settings. Not a huge fan of the layout or these type of buttons in general. But in addition to that, you also, of course, have a normal size glove box right here. Now, moving on to the center armrest here. A couple of cup holders. This is what the key looks like. Pretty typical Nissan key. Nothing special going on about this. Hard plastic all around. Lock, unlock. You have the opening for the trunk and the panic button with the nice little Nissan logo here. As I said, two cup holders. You can slide this And if you want to cover the cup holders up, you can do that with this slider, which feels pretty solid to me. Gear selector here, putting it into reverse, going to pop up the 360 camera with the beautiful trajectory lines. Decent resolution for the camera. It's not the best resolution I've seen, but it's definitely going to show you any sort of Cadillac Escalade behind you so you don't reverse into it. You can adjust the entire length of this by using these buttons right here to slide the, the entire armrest back and forth. And if we slide it all the way back, you're gonna see that down here we have more storage and a couple of USBs and also a cigarette outlet. A couple of more buttons here on the armrest. The drive modes, you select those here. 4 different drive modes: Sport, Standard, Eco, and Snow. You also have these buttons, as I showed you, for opening and closing the additional compartment there. You also have the wireless charger underneath here, and this is what I'm talking about. There's not a lot of storage underneath the armrest itself, which is why I think Nissan decided to add this extra compartment right here. Not as easily accessible as something under the armrest, but I guess it's totally fine as something unique. You don't really see that in a lot of cars. I like the color here for the armrest. Not the softest one, but it feels very upscale. Now looking at the seats, beautifully designed seats. You can see the stitching in the middle, heated and ventilated as we talked about. The design overall looks pretty sporty, but we don't have a lot of bolstering. As I said, this is not a very sporty feel for the Ariya when you drive this. It feels like one of these EVs that you just want to buy to get you from point A to point B, and it does have a decently good looking styling for the exterior. The interior feels fine. We have this curvature here, as you can see, for these dual screens. You can press the camera button here, and it's going to pop up the cameras, the reverse cameras, without having to put it into reverse. Now looking at the gauge cluster here, you can customize this a little bit if you want to do that by using this button right here on the left side, so you can have it a little bit customizable, but I wish we could have more customization options for the center screen here, since this is a fully digital gauge cluster. But it's pretty good. The resolution feels fine. You have these buttons on the right side here for the cruise control settings and the voice command, and the buttons for the radio, and also customizing the gauge cluster on the left side. 2-spoke steering wheel looks pretty decent. Usually I'm not a fan of 2-spoke steering wheels, but in this case I think it looks pretty good. Nissan logo in the middle, heated steering wheel, of course, pretty small steering wheel as well, making it a little bit more sporty. No paddles here for the regen though. I wish we had some paddles for the regen. If you want to put the regen on, you have to click the E-step button right here every time you start the car. Looking up top here, we do have a rear view camera mirror or a screen. I like to have it as just a regular mirror, and we have the big sunroof here that can also open up if you want to, which is pretty unique for these type of sunroof. Usually you can just slide the curtain open and not open it up completely, but we can do that here in the Ariya. On the left side of the steering wheel, a couple more safety buttons right here. Coming in to the back seat of the Nissan Ariya Platinum Plus E-Force, decent amount of space back here. And the thing about this is, since we don't have a frunk, what Nissan prioritized is interior space. You can clearly feel that when you're in this car. You have so much legroom here, even though the outside of this car doesn't necessarily feel like a very big car, but when you're inside of this, you can clearly tell that the reason why you don't have a frunk is to just optimize the space for the interior, and that goes for the back seat as well. Heated seats here for the back seats, a couple of USB ports, vents, and if we fold down the center armrest here, you are going to find yourself 2 cup holders right here in the middle. All right, guys, let's take the 2024 Nissan Ariya Platinum E-Force for a drive here. Let's see. Let me show you that what this driving is all about. As I said, doesn't feel like a very sporty SUV to me, but that is totally fine, and we don't need to have every single car be sporty. And I think this is one of these examples of an EV that looks pretty stylish. I don't mind the exterior style. I think the exterior looks pretty good, to be honest. The interior is okay, nothing crazy going on in the interior. And if you just want a regular day, daily EV, I think this is a good choice. It is pretty expensive though. You have 389 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in about 4.9 seconds. So let's put it into sport here. These buttons, again, they just don't work all the time. It's so annoying. I just want to have regular buttons, both here and for the climate setting. So let's floor it here and let's see how this goes. And we're going uphill and we're up to 60 there. Now, the thing about the driving experience in this car, let's put it back into standard. I wish we had one pedal driving. The thing about this driving experience is the EV experience with this. If you have it in regen, which I have right now with the E-step being on here, I wanted to, when I let off the gas, I wanted to slowly just coast to a full stop. However, if I do that in this car, let me come onto this straight here and I'll show you what I mean. If I just let off the gas here, we're gonna coast. You can see that it starts to charge the battery, and then it lets off at about 5 miles per hour, 6 miles per hour, and then it just coasts until you manually step on the brake. I wanted to come to a complete stop to be able to use one pedal driving. That would make so much more sense to me. And the thing about this is, when you're letting off the gas, you can actually see the brake pedal being pressed in as you come to a stop and as this E-step is enabled. It's a pretty weird driving experience, and something that I don't think I've ever felt in any other EVs. The ride quality is great. With the 19-inch wheels, you still have a big piece of sidewall for the tires, so it's very comfortable, almost too spongy for me, this driving experience. I wish it was a little bit harsher, specifically in the corner. Maybe not harsher, but a little bit more stable in the corners. It feels like a very wobbly suspension, which is good if you're into that sort of suspension, obviously, if you prefer more, 100% comfort over handling. But if you're looking for a sporty handling EV, the Ariya is not going to be the one for you unless you manage to get your hands on the Nismo, maybe imported from Japan or something, which I'm not sure if it's even possible. There's no one behind us, no one in front of us. Let's come to a complete stop, and hopefully I can get this into sport pretty quickly here. Complete stop, 0 to 60, let's go. And we're up to 60. I just let off just before 60 there. So 4.9 seconds sounds like it's a correct number going 0 to 60. It feels pretty slow from the get-go. It doesn't really feel like you have that EV instant torque, even though this is a dual motor all-wheel drive version. It feels pretty sluggish from the beginning, but then when it picks up, of course, all that power is going to be planted to all 4 wheels and off you go. Now it says that I have 213 miles of range here at 72%. I've learned over these few days I've been driving this car that the range is pretty optimistic in this car. It's a little bit lower than what it actually says. Of course, that depends on your driving style as well, but I do think it doesn't really matter what type of driving style you have. The range is always going to be a little bit optimistic. That's showing in the display. Ergonomically, this interior, a couple of things. I think this armrest sits way too low. My elbow is sort of dangling in the air here. I wanted to have the armrest sit a little higher than what it does right here. And then we have this opening here. If I just sit like this, normal driving position, and I want to open the center compartment there, it's gonna start crushing my knee, and it feels pretty strong, the motors for this. That's something to be aware of. If you're driving this, you need to make sure your leg is out of the way before you get this very sharp corner right in your knee, which is not very comfortable at all. Just cruising around here at 74 miles per hour. You can put it back into eco. Just cruise along here. The road noise is decent. It's not the worst road noise, but there is a substantial amount of it. I think it's mostly wind noise and not from the tires, but it's not something that really bothers me a lot. So overall, is the Nissan Ariya something that I would consider buying? And the answer to that is no, because if I were to buy an EV, first of all, I don't think I would buy an EV right now. I already have an EV, the Tesla Model 3, and I don't want another one. If I were to buy an EV today, it would have to be something small and nimble, something sporty, and not just an everyday SUV crossover. This is not even rated as an SUV. I'm not even sure what they rate this as. Maybe a wagon or something like that. But I would definitely want to go with something sporty and small if I were to get an EV again. This one is great if you prefer comfort and you don't really necessarily want to have a sporty car, or that's not something you care about, but you do want to have a good looking car from both an exterior, and I would say the interior feels pretty nice as well, then this might be something that's for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.